Everyone told me to quit, my family, my ex, even investors. But I believed in what we were building, what could save thousands of lives. They saw failure. I saw purpose. And I refused to let go of the one thing that truly mattered. Part 1. My name is Ava Sinclair. I'm 30 years old. And last month, my entire family sat me down and staged an emergency intervention. Not because I was on drugs. Not because I was spiraling. But because, according to them, my tech startup was a complete failure. They ambushed me after Sunday lunch. I walked into the living room expecting coffee and conversation. Instead, I was met with my father standing with his arms crossed, my mother looking pale and tight-lipped, and my sister Claire sitting perfectly poised on the couch like she was waiting for her award. All eyes turned to me. Ava, we're worried, my mother began gently. Dr. Lionel Sinclair, my father, didn't even bother with softness. You're burning through money and time. It's time to stop pretending. Claire, my perfect older sister, tilted her head and said, maybe it's time to consider something more stable? The room went quiet. I opened my mouth to speak, but then it happened. My mother's phone buzzed on the coffee table. She picked it up and froze. It was a Wall Street Journal alert. PulseLink earns national recognition in healthcare innovation. I watched her face change. She blinked and glanced at me, then back at her phone. For a moment, just 1 second, the judgment faded. Growing up in the Sinclair household meant one thing: success wasn't optional. It was demanded. My father, Dr. Lionel Sinclair, was one of the top cardiothoracic surgeons in the country. My mother, Meredith Sinclair, spent a decade teaching economics at the Ivy League level. Intelligence was not celebrated, it was expected. Mistakes were corrected before they could breathe. And failure? Failure wasn't even in the family vocabulary. Dinner conversations were like strategic planning meetings. We didn't talk about feelings. We talked about goals, rankings, research grants, and promotions. Claire thrived in that world. She followed instructions like a soldier in uniform. Straight-A student, debate champion, law school at Yale. She was the golden daughter, shiny, predictable, obedient. And then there was me. Even as a kid, I thought differently. While Claire built the volcano for her science fair exactly how the teacher explained, I was experimenting with a magnetic levitation system for mine. I remember being so proud, thinking, this is going to blow their minds. But when I showed my dad, he just gave me that tight, controlled smile and said, sometimes, Ava, the proven way is the best way. Look at Claire's. It worked. That line became a loop in my life. My creativity wasn't seen as brilliance, it was treated like recklessness. Still, I learned how to thrive in their world. I graduated with honors from Stanford, double majoring in computer science and biomedical engineering. My parents smiled proudly at graduation, already dreaming aloud about my future. Google, my mom said. Apple, my dad added. Or medicine, like your father, my aunt whispered. I followed the script for a while. I landed a job at Medinova, a massive tech company working on healthcare solutions. The salary was impressive. The office had walls made of glass and coffee that tasted like success. My parents bragged about it to their friends, saying, Ava is developing AI for Medinova's medical systems. They didn't talk about how I cried in the bathroom some nights. How my work felt like putting band-aids on bullet wounds. The breaking point came when I worked on a case involving rare disease patients. These were people who were practically invisible to the system, shuffled between specialists, denied access to trials, wasting months in hopeless searches. One day mother told me, if we'd known about that trial 6 months earlier, he might still be alive. That stuck with me. So I started to dream bigger, dangerously big. I imagined building a platform that would cut through the maze. Something powered by AI that could take a patient's rare symptoms and match them directly to the right specialist or trial in seconds. I called it PulseLink. When I told my family I was quitting Medinova to start my own company, the silence was so loud I could hear the air leave the room. My mother tried to stay calm. If anyone can make it work, it's you, Ava. But please, have a backup plan. My father frowned. The healthcare system isn't built for disruption. You're being naive. And Claire? She raised an eyebrow and asked, does your startup even offer health insurance? At first, they pretended to support me. They came to my small launch party. My father wrote me a check for seed funding, but it wasn't a gift. It came with a 10-page contract and a return on investment timeline. I brought on Talia Reid, a brilliant coder I met at Medinova. She believed in the mission as much as I did. We rented a shoebox office space that doubled as our bedroom when we worked too late to drive home. We were hungry, passionate, every day was chaos, and every day mattered. Back then, I was still dating Ethan Carter. He was a rising star in investment banking, suited, charming, and fascinated by the idea of dating a founder. At first, he was impressed. "She's going to be the next female tech mogul," he'd say at parties, introducing me like a trophy with a startup. But as weeks turned to months, and the money didn't come pouring in, the charm faded. "This was supposed to be a quick win, Ava," he snapped one night. I stared at him. "People's lives aren't quick wins." Eventually, he left. "I need someone more grounded," he said. Talia and I kept pushing. The first year was brutal but hopeful. We got small investments from angel investors interested in healthcare disruption. We built a prototype, ran early tests, and got real feedback from real patients. The feedback was moving. A man with a rare blood disorder found a trial he'd never heard of. A woman finally connected with a doctor who specialized in her daughter's condition. But still, the profit model wasn't clear, and every step forward meant 5 new obstacles. By year 2, things started to fracture. 2 big funding deals collapsed right before closing. The algorithm had accuracy issues under edge cases and regulation. It was a wall of red tape. Ethan was gone. My bank balance was dropping. My inbox was full of rejection emails from investors who didn't see the market potential. My family had gone from silent to openly skeptical. Sundays at home felt like business reviews. "What's your burn rate this month?" my dad would ask before I'd even finished my tea. "You should consider a merger," Claire said one evening, sipping her wine like she owned the world. Meanwhile, Claire was promoted to senior counsel at her law firm. She bought a condo in the city. She wore designer suits and dined with partners. My mom beamed about it over dinner. "Claire just got a bonus," she said, casting a quick glance at me as I picked at reheated noodles from our office kitchenette. What they didn't see, what they refused to see, was that we were close. Talia and I had restructured the algorithm. It now matched patients with 37% more accuracy. A hospital in Chicago agreed to a pilot program. A handful of lives were already changed, but no one claps for quiet progress. Not in the Sinclair family. Still, I didn't quit. Because this dream wasn't just about business anymore. It was about every patient we helped, every doctor we connected, every system we made just a little less broken. So when my mother's phone buzzed during that intervention, and she saw the Wall Street Journal headline about PulseLink's breakthrough, I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Her eyes widened. She swallowed hard. The silence that followed said more than their judgments ever could. And for the first time in years, I saw something new in her expression. Pride. Real, unspoken, reluctant pride. And that was only the beginning. Everyone told me to quit, my family, my ex, even investors. But I believed in what we were building, what could save thousands of lives. They saw failure. I saw purpose. And I refused to let go of the one thing that truly mattered. Part 2. Family dinners had turned into quiet nightmares. Each Sunday, I braced myself as I pulled into the long, tree-lined driveway of my parents' sprawling colonial house in the Willow Heights suburbs. The white brick mansion stood like a monument to perfection, and I, the girl chasing a flickering dream, was the weekly disappointment. At the dinner table, just as everyone had taken their seats and the roasted chicken had been carved, it would begin. "So, how's the little startup going?" my father, Dr. Lionel Sinclair, would ask with a tone that dressed the word startup in disdain. His voice always cut through the air like a scalpel, precise, cold, and impossible to ignore. I'd open my mouth to answer, but before I could get out a full sentence, he'd turn to my sister. "Claire just secured a $3 million settlement on the Dalton case," he'd announce proudly. Everyone would turn their eyes to Claire, my older sister by 3 years. She would lower her gaze, her face flushed in faux humility, but I never missed the sly smirk that tugged at the corner of her lips. Claire had always been the Sinclair family's golden child. Her life moved in a straight line: Yale Law School, federal clerkship, now climbing fast at Sullivan & Morgan, one of Boston's elite law firms. Every step of her journey glittered with approval. She was the yardstick by which I was constantly measured and found lacking. Thanksgiving was even worse. While we passed stuffing and cranberry sauce, Aunt Evelyn leaned over the table with a voice full of sugary pity. "Still doing that computer thing, dear?" she asked, tilting her head. I saw an opening at Mass General in their admin department. Very stable. Great benefits. I forced a smile. "I'm building a healthcare platform that connects patients with rare diseases to clinical trials. We've made a lot of progress recently." Uncle Raymond chuckled. "But are you making money?" The table erupted in laughter. I stared at my mashed potatoes, poking them with my fork, pretending not to hear. But I heard every word, every jab. The grand finale came at Christmas. Snow fell gently outside, the house twinkled with gold lights, and the smell of cinnamon filled the air. Claire stood and, with perfect grace, announced that she had made partner. Champagne flutes appeared out of nowhere like they had been waiting for this very moment. My father stood up, raising his glass. "Your mother and I always knew you were destined for greatness," he said, his voice shaking with pride. "You've chosen excellence and stayed the course. You've made us so proud." Everyone clapped. I clapped too, because I truly was happy for her. But the comparison, silent, cruel, hung in the air like smoke. Then, my father turned to me across the table. "And Ava," he said, "we know you'll find your footing once you're ready to get serious." It wasn't just a comment. It was a sentence. In January, a new crisis struck. Our main server crashed. PulseLink, our entire platform, was offline for 3 full days. We missed a crucial partnership opportunity with a research hospital in Denver. The blow was enormous. Our cash was running thin. We were 5 people, surviving on caffeine, hope, and dwindling funds. I didn't want to, but I had no choice. I swallowed my pride and called my father. We met at his country club, where the chairs were leather and silence was expensive. He sipped scotch while I explained what had happened, outlining our algorithmic improvements and pending talks with Horizon Ventures. "We just need $50,000 to bridge to our next round," I said, keeping my tone professional. "It's a loan, not a gift." He adjusted his glasses and looked at me the way he might evaluate a first-year medical student with shaky hands. "So, you're asking for another investment?" "Technically, a loan," I clarified. "Horizon focuses exclusively on healthcare innovation. They've shown real interest in PulseLink." He set his glass down slowly. "Ava, I've supported this adventure of yours for 2 years now," he said, voice cool and composed. "Your mother and I are beginning to think this is just a cycle of almost, but never quite." I leaned forward. "Dad, we're on the edge of a breakthrough. Our new version is matching patients with 95% accuracy. That's unheard of in this space." He sighed. "I'll speak to your mother, but I think what you really need isn't more money. It's a reality check." 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Family emergency meeting. This Saturday at 4 p.m. Please come to the house. It's important." I called her immediately. "Mom, what's going on?" She was vague. "Your father just feels we need to talk openly about where things are heading. Claire will be there, too." That night, I stayed late at the office. Talia and I had been working on a refined model for our matching algorithm. At 2 a.m., it finally clicked. We ran a batch test, and the results were stunning. Nearly 95% matching accuracy for one of the most difficult rare disorders, Myasthenia gravis. I texted Talia. She called instantly. "This could be it," she breathed. "We can finally prove clinical scale impact." "I know," I said, my heart beat with a wild mix of elation and dread. "But my family's planning some kind of intervention this Saturday. I think they're going to try to shut me down." There was silence on the line. Then Talia asked carefully, "Are you considering it?" I stared at the screen where our simulations still glowed. "I don't know," I whispered. "I'm so tired of fighting, my family, investors, the doubts." Ethan left. "The money's almost gone. Everyone says I'm wasting my potential." "What about the patients?" Talia asked softly. "What about Eliza?" My chest tightened. Eliza was 12. She had a rare form of muscular dystrophy and had been connected to a groundbreaking trial through PulseLink's pilot in Chicago. Her mother had sent us a video message, crying as she thanked us for giving her daughter a chance she couldn't find anywhere else. I closed my eyes. "I know," I whispered. "I just need to get through this meeting. Try, one last time, to make them understand. And if they don't?" "If they don't, we figure it out," I said. Talia didn't hesitate. "We always do." Saturday came far too fast. I drove to my parents' house in silence, rehearsing responses, statistics, defenses, every version of my truth I'd told 100 times and still wasn't heard. But nothing prepared me for what I saw when I pulled into the circular driveway at 4 p.m. sharp. There were more cars than expected. I recognized Uncle Raymond's Mercedes, Aunt Evelyn's SUV, Cousin Becca's little red hybrid. This wasn't a conversation. It was a full-on ambush. The front door opened before I could even knock. My mother stood there, her face a tight knot of concern and resolve. "Ava, sweetie," she said, hugging me briefly. "Everyone's waiting in the living room." "Everyone?" I echoed. "Mom, what exactly is going on?" She didn't meet my eyes. "Your father thinks it's time we all had a serious conversation about your situation." I froze. My heart dropped into my stomach as I stepped into the house. Laughter and chatter spilled from the living room, filled with relatives who'd never once asked about PulseLink, who didn't even know what an algorithm was. And yet, they had gathered to judge me, to to talk sense into me, to shut me down. But what they didn't know, what they would soon find out, was that I had something they couldn't take away. Purpose. And I wasn't leaving without a fight. Part 3. The moment I stepped into the living room, I felt like I had wandered onto the set of a daytime intervention show. The room fell completely silent. My father, Dr. Lionel Sinclair, stood beside the fireplace like a judge ready to pronounce a sentence. Claire sat upright on the leather couch, legs crossed, a legal pad perched neatly on her lap like she was preparing a closing argument. Around the room, in carefully spaced chairs and love seats, sat Uncle Raymond and Aunt Evelyn, Dr. Howard Lynn and his wife Marlene, my godmother Aunt Josephine, and, shockingly, Marcus Delaney, my mother's financial advisor. I froze in the doorway. "What is this?" I asked, choosing to remain standing even though a lone empty chair had been placed directly across from my father. "Ava, please sit down," my father said, his tone carefully controlled. "We've gathered as a family because we're concerned about the direction your life is taking." "And Marcus is family now?" I asked, nodding toward the financial advisor, who looked extremely uncomfortable under the weight of my glare. "He's here to provide a professional perspective," my father replied smoothly. "Please, sit." Reluctantly, I took the seat, every muscle in my body tight with tension. I felt like a defendant facing a jury stacked with people who had already decided my guilt. My father began, voice rehearsed, tone authoritative. "For 2 years, we've supported your entrepreneurial experiment. We've watched you pour your savings, your time, your relationships, and your talents into something that, frankly, shows no signs of viability. As a family, we can't just sit by and watch you throw your future away." Uncle Raymond jumped in, his voice full of faux concern. "Your father asked me to look at your business plan, Ava. The burn rate is unsustainable without major investment, which, after 2 years, hasn't come. That's usually a market signal." I blinked at my father. "You gave him our confidential business documents?" "I gave him what you gave me when you asked for that $50,000, my father said matter-of-factly. "And Raymond agrees, the outlook isn't good." Aunt Evelyn leaned forward, hands folded. "Honey, no one is saying you're not brilliant or hardworking. But sometimes, the smartest thing you can do is know when to cut your losses. I have a friend at Massachusetts General. She could get your resume in front of the right people." "I don't want to work at Mass General," I snapped, my voice louder than I intended. "PulseLink is finally seeing real results. We're connecting patients with rare diseases to treatments that could actually save their lives." "But is it financially viable?" Marcus asked softly, as though he were trying to be the calm voice of reason. "Even the most altruistic idea needs a sustainable business model. We're pre-revenue by design," I explained, already feeling like I was speaking another language. "We're refining the algorithm and building the network before monetizing. It's standard in this field. This isn't a bakery or a shoe store." Dr. Lin shook his head slowly. "I've seen so many medical innovations fail, not because they weren't good, but because they couldn't survive the red tape or the business side. Innovation is only half the equation." Aunt Josephine, who had remained quiet until now, finally spoke. "Ava, we're worried about you personally, too. Ethan was such a wonderful man, and your mother says you barely leave the office. You're working yourself into the ground." I clenched my fists in my lap. Ethan left because he wanted to date an image. He didn't want a woman with dreams of her own. "And my personal life," I added, my voice rising, "is not up for discussion." Claire looked up from her notes, her expression polished and professional. "I took the liberty of drafting a few options," she said, sliding a piece of paper across the table. "I have connections at several firms. You could position your experience at PulseLink as entrepreneurial initiative. That could help you pivot into a more stable role." "That's very thoughtful," I said tightly. "But I'm not looking for a job. I have a job. I'm the CEO of a company that's changing people's lives." My mother, Meredith, who had remained oddly quiet, reached over and touched my arm gently. "Sweetheart, we know how much you care about this. You've always been idealistic. But sometimes, life doesn't go the way we dream it. That's not failure. It's just reality." I looked around the room, heart pounding, trying to find even a flicker of belief in their eyes. "Our algorithm just achieved 95% matching accuracy," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "Do you understand what that means? It means patients, people who've been searching for answers for years, can now find the right treatment in days. That's not just a number. That's someone's mother, daughter, child getting a second chance at life." My father sighed heavily. "Ava, everyone wants to save the world when they're young. But medical innovation has its own system, its own structure. If your idea had merit, the market would have responded by now." "The market is broken," I said fiercely. "That's why we're building something better." "You have no investor interest," he countered. "Not from people who understand business, not from people who see value beyond idealism." Claire nodded. Ava, your passion is admirable. But passion doesn't pay rent. I've spent 8 years building my career, slowly, strategically. I made hard choices. I delayed gratification. And it paid off. My father gestured to her, pride gleaming on his face. Exactly. Your sister made partner. And here you are, still playing entrepreneur. The words felt like a slap. I flinched, but I didn't let them see it. The room fell into a tense silence. Everyone shifted awkwardly, the harshness of his statement still echoing. I stood slowly, grabbing my purse. I think we're done here, I said quietly. My father lifted a hand. Ava, don't be dramatic. We're trying to help you. No, I replied, my voice firm. You're trying to shape me into something I'm not. You've never believed in what I'm building, because you've never really tried to understand it. My mother looked pained. Ava, please. Your father just wants what's best for you. He wants what he thinks is best, I corrected. But he's not the one waking up at 3 a.m. with an idea. He's not the one answering emails from parents crying because we found a specialist their child desperately needed. He's not the one working beside Talia night after night to make this work. I glanced around the room. You're all so quick to question me, to doubt me, to dissect my choices like they're symptoms of a disorder. But none of you were there when Eliza found treatment. None of you saw her mother cry with joy because she finally had hope. I looked directly at my father. You say I haven't made it, but I already have. Because even if PulseLink never becomes a billion-dollar company, it already made a difference. The silence was deafening. I didn't wait for anyone to speak. I turned and walked toward the door, head high, tears threatening but not yet fallen. I had come hoping they'd finally understand. Instead, I had found something else. Clarity.